Well, all right, I just got to Mercy Ridge Retirement Home up in Townsend, Maryland. It is, I think, December 12th, December 11th. Anyways, the middle of December 2022. I'm going to go see Betsy McNamara, my great aunt, and have lunch with her. Let's go. All right, I just got here with Aunt Betsy, and we are going to head to lunch. Woohoo!
You can talk.
Okay, I'll talk. You can hang out. Just walk. I'll do the talking, you do the walking.
Get the salady part,
Right.
and then you get a couple of sides with it.
Cut down on the carbs.
Yeah,
Definitely.
and enjoy, yeah.
Okay.
Anything. I mean, it is what it is. The club sandwich is good. I try to encourage them to make fries that are hot. Bring fries that are hot.
Oh yeah.
They're
Hot fries are the best.
Yeah.
Okay. Seeing a pretty good sandwich list.
The pizzas are decent. They're
Okay.
like.
Sounds like there's been a lot of changes going on in your life.
But let me tell you what my weekend was. I kept telling you I had such a...
Tell me about it. I would love to hear about it.
Well, I always play Rummy Cube at 10:30 on Saturday morning with a group, and we have a good time. It's a kids' game, but we laugh and we play, and it's fun. Then, one of those gals, Phyllis, and I had lunch with two priests who are very unusual priests. They're very interesting people, and they keep up to date on what's going on in the world and what's
Politics
going on
and all that stuff.
Yes, and they see things the way I see them, and even they're okay with the way I see religion.
Really? Okay. Not
at least
super
one
preachy.
of them is.
Not super preachy.
Not at all.
That's a good way to be.
Kind of sympathetic, just understanding, and
I think some people, as they get older, it's easier for them to see. I mean, they've had so much life experience. They can see other positions and other people's opinions, and at least I like to think that. I know me. I've opened up on a lot of things over my life where years ago I was less empathetic towards others, especially with gay people. When I was in high school, I was kind of a homophobe, and now I'm not at all. And same thing with, even more recently, is transgender people. I didn't understand that at all up until my mid-30s, and then I had an epiphany, and then I did a complete change of my opinion there, and now I'm much more in tune with trans rights and stuff like that. So I feel way better about myself.
Have you a friend, or do you know people that are gay or whatever, transgender? Because if you do, that makes you it can make you very empathetic.
Yeah.
That's what did me, was I don't think I was terribly opposed, but once I realized what they were dealing with and how difficult it was.
It's horrific.
I really changed. I was very open to it. Let's put it that way.
Well, I've actually had several gay roommates when I was younger, and one of my really good friends now is gay, and so that was always relatively easy for me to understand.
Speaking of gay roommates,
Yeah.
my sophomore year in college, I had a gay roommate and didn't know it till I was about 40.
Huh.
And all I can remember is that she had this crush on.
Oh, great. Thank you.
Thank you. She had this crush on Pinky.
Who's Pinky?
She was a cute girl in our class. Very cute.
Oh, that's awesome. Pinky. Where is she now?
I don't know.
That's hilarious.
No.
And that was such a long time ago, you know, it was probably a lot harder for people to come out.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
You know?
I think it was about the 25th reunion
Yeah.
that I realized she was gay.
Yeah.
I like this chili pretty well. It's different.
That's
but
tasty. Yeah. Got a little spice to it, too. I oversalt all my food, though. I'm so bad. I love salty food.
Well, my father loved salty food too, and I like it. And you know, I've decided lately, to hell with it. If I want salt,
Do it. Why
I'm
not?
gonna have salt.
Yeah.
I don't think I've got that much time left anyway.
Well, so do you come here like every day or no?
No, we get so much food at dinner. Sometimes I come when she cleans my apartment, because she cleans my apartment at noon, and that's when I normally eat. So sometimes I come down, but I get so much food at dinner time, and you can take it home with you.
I got you.
And they now have reinstated, since COVID, they've reinstated the salad bar,
Okay.
which is extensive, and I always take a big box of salady stuff up
yeah.
with me.
Why not?
And we have soup, 2 kinds of soup every day. And so I have soup and salad a lot. And then I usually buy cheese. And you can get fruit on the salad bar. They have all kinds of fruit. So I like fruit and cheese. I eat that sometimes at lunchtime.
So if you don't feel like going down to get food, can you get food dropped off at your place?
You can. It's $5. Or if you're sick, I mean, like I could now, or at least they told me a week or so ago that I could order food up free. But I prefer to go down if I can, because it's better for me to move around a little bit and to get out. So if I feel good enough to possibly go down and get it,
yeah.
I get it. And then occasionally I eat with people. But I don't like too many regular engagements to eat with people.
Right.
Because after a while you know everything they've got to say.
Yeah, there's not a lot of new material, you know. Like rehashing old stories and...
Yep.
Oh, yum.
Lovely.
Perfect. Okay.
Can I get you guys to make a lunch?
I think I'm okay. You okay, Betsy?
I'm good.
Okay, cool. You know, when I first tried blue cheese, I did not like it at all.
I understand that.
But I have grown to appreciate it.
Your grandfather liked the smellier the better, I think.
Oh, jeez.
So anyway, yesterday, I'm trying to tell you the good time.
Yeah, tell me about your weekend.
And you're topping it off, you see, by coming to see me.
Good, I'm glad.
So I had rummy Q and lunch with 2 priests. And then my friend Ann Worthington turned 90.
Oh, wow.
And her family came for a party. And she invited 4 of us residents that she knows to this party, which was in the big dining room. And they really outdid themselves.
And were you one of the 4?
I was one of the 4. And it was very tiring for me because I already had 2 events. But I took a nap and I went, and it was at 6 o'clock and it lasted for 2 hours, which was very long for me. But anyway, it was lovely. And her family.
Good people?
Oh yeah, oh yeah. Her daughter moved years ago to Iceland.
Iceland?
And married a guy, an Icelandic guy, and moved to Iceland. And so she had 2 children, a boy and a girl, I think, who were both there last night. And the girl is studying now or working in Cambridge, England.
Okay.
With her boyfriend who came last night.
Wow.
And I asked them where they met, and they said they met in Chicago. It was like...
All over.
It was a very international group.
Love that.
And the 4 people who are from here, I'm the only one who was born in the United States. I was born in the United States. The other 3 were born in Germany.
Right.
And one came over as a little girl after World War II, because her father was called over to help make the atomic bomb.
Oh, wow.
Isn't that nice?
She's got some stories, I'm sure.
And she was a pharmacist. And the other, Gerda, grew up in Germany, and she served in Hitler's army. She's 97. She's older.
Right.
But anyway, she's cool. And Charlotte came over later with her husband. Now Gerda came over twice. She came over as an exchange student after World War II and really liked the United States. And then she got married and came over with her husband, who was a doctor. And that was not a good marriage.
Oh, really?
But anyway, she survived and became a realtor, a very successful real estate agent, and supported her family, and still curses him every other day. You know, Logan works for Zillow.
Oh, really?
You know what Zillow is? Everybody seems to, except me.
I do know Zillow. Yep.
Oh, Tommy and Catherine are in Seattle right now, visiting their great-grandson, my great-grandson. And they are shopping for a house.
In Seattle?
Huh?
In Seattle?
Mm-hmm.
It's a great place to live.
They want to be near the grandson.
Of course.
Not too close, but they want to be close. And so she will finish 2 years in her current assignment with the library system, which she manages a branch.
Right.
Yeah. So she wants to finish 2 years at that branch, and that'll be up in July. But Tommy said if they found anything, they would put money down. They don't need a big place. You know, they're not raising a family, but they want a good location.
I wonder if they did like a condo.
I asked him that. He said no.
No, they want an actual house.
They lived in a condo, I think, before they got a house.
Yeah.
So they know what it means. I thought it sounded like it could be a good idea.
When you're getting older, it's like condos are generally more downtown, so they're a better location. You know, you don't have to worry about a yard.
Right. There's a lot of work you don't have to do.
So I think they're a great alternative.
I do too.
Well, that's exciting. I'm actually, I was in Seattle in September. and I'm heading there in January. So I'm going out there soon.
You know, you got a lot of relatives in Washington State.
The other Washington. Where does Logan live? Like in Seattle?
Oh, she's in Seattle, yeah.
Okay.
And Ryan is in Seattle. Ryan is working for Amazon.
They have a big presence out there.
Yes.
I think that's their headquarters. Well, I should have done this before, but let's take a quick selfie. I'll send that to Jan. I think she wants to come out and visit.
Really?
Yeah. I'm not sure when, but
Yeah.
sometime soon.
That'd be great.
You know, Heather is turning 50 in January.
You know, Heather is one that I didn't keep close enough to,
Yeah,
because I think she's pretty cool.
she was cool.
And she was in Washington. I think she got her master's degree, business degree, at University of Maryland. But she was in Washington or in that area
Yep.
for a couple of years, and she always came. Well, we had her for Easter holidays when she wasn't going to go home, you know. And I remember her hiding. She and Tom would hide the Easter eggs, and that was fun.
That sounds fun.
And one time she even played golf with us.
Was she any good?
I have no recollection. How old are you?
I just turned 42. So I'm getting pretty old myself.
Yeah, that's a good age. You know who you are, pretty much.
For the most part, yeah.
That's the age when I went back to school.
Really?
Because I stayed home for a number of years with the kids. And then I went back and got my master's in library science so I could be a librarian. Because I had been a chemist before, and I didn't enjoy. I had 3 different jobs as a chemist, and I didn't like any of them. They were very routine and boring.
Not interesting?
No.
Mixing chemicals?
No.
I think being a chemist, you have to be very precise. You know, there's not a lot of room for error.
That's another problem. In one of my jobs, I was checking the molybdenum in, now I can't remember the name of them, the tiny microscopic critters that, almost microscopic, they can...
Little microbes? No?
In seawater.
Like plankton?
Yes. Thank you. Plankton. And they would collect it, and I would work on the sample for the samples for, you know, maybe 2 weeks, doing various things and baking them and weighing them in these little crucibles. And then I drop one.
Oh no. Man. There's the end of the road for those plankton.
Oh God, it was awful. Besides that, it was at Johns Hopkins and it was hotter than hell.
Oh.
I was in I think it used to be the attic, or maybe it was not a room at all. I think they had made a room out of this space up above all the other floors.
Yeah.
And it was like almost, it was in the high 90s every single day. There was no air conditioning.
No air conditioning. In the high 90s? That doesn't sound safe.
And I was pregnant.
It's not safe at all. No.
I always said if it gets to be 100, if it's actually 100, I'm gonna go home.
Did you have a thermometer?
Yeah.
It was probably before OSHA existed.
Yes, it certainly was. I did not even have the concept, but I knew
Workers'
it was
rights.
miserable up there.
So what was your interest in chemistry? Like what spawned that? Did you actually get your degree in it?
I got my degree in chemistry. I worked for E.I. DuPont and Dane Moore's company in Indiana in a gunpowder plant. Lived in, that was my first job.
In a gunpowder plant. Jesus.
And that was my first job.
Now, was that a place you wanted to work, or was that just the first place that was available and you just kind of...
They offered me the job.
They offered you the job.
I graduated from college. And that year, two friends and I were going to drive all around the country, all the way to California and up the coast and back. And so I told them that I'd be available in August.
Huh.
And they said yes. And we drove all across the country.
Huh.
And we got there the year Margaret Mary was very pregnant with Jan, who was born in that August.
Like 52? Okay.
Yes, it is.
Okay.
So we got there and we saw them, but we also saw the country, and that was before the interstate highways.
Oh, wow.
It was like two-way roads, and we just drove. We were 7 weeks. We drove 7 weeks.
Wow, that's an adventure.
It was terrific. Yeah.
Any place stick out in your mind?
In Utah, there's two parks.
Well, you know, Utah, there's what, like Arches and Moab and Canyonlands and Bryce.
And there's another one near Bryce. We went to Bryce and we went to this other one. You know, Bryce, you're up high and you look down on the things. This other one, you're down low and you climb up to these places, or take a donkey or whatever.
And you drove all the way through there.
Oh yeah.
And then it was you and two other women?
And then two other recent graduates, two girls. We went to Grand Canyon. By the time we got to Grand Canyon, we were not impressed.
Seen it all. Well, some people say they like Bryce better than the Grand Canyon. I've heard that.
Yeah.
So.
But it was the other one, and I can't think. What's the other one near Bryce? There's Canyonlands. There's all kinds of canyons in Utah. It's beautiful.
Well, there's also what's the other one in the southeastern corner? Not the Painted Desert. It's Monument Valley.
No.
Monument Valley. That's another.
Oh yeah. No. Anyway. Then we got all the way over to the coast, and your grandfather insisted that we should go down and into Tijuana to have the experience of going to Mexico.
Sure, good.
So we went to Tijuana, where they called us Senorita Honey Baby. Very, very cool.
Senorita Honey Baby. Now, how many times you've been called Senorita Honey Baby since?
And then we went up the coast and stayed in San Francisco for a few days with a college friend. And we went up the coast of Oregon and Washington. I'm trying to think. That was before Chuck was out there. I'm not sure how far we went, but we saw a lot of coast. We came home pretty fast, yeah. But going up the coast, we was very slow.
It was a slow ride out, and on the way back, you were ready to come home.
Yeah. Well, one of the gals had to get back. She was in a wedding.
Oh, right.
Get back.
Yeah. And that was probably the days before they had like widespread air travel, right? Like if you wanted to travel somewhere, it'd either be by bus or by train, or you'd have to drive.
Never thought about traveling by air.
Right.
Although I had traveled by air. Because before I even went to college, a friend of mine's big sister had a boyfriend who had a very small plane.
Okay.
And that was my first experience.
Really? Okay.
And we flew up over the Chesapeake Bay. Very beautiful.
That's kind of cool.
It was very cool.
Now, how old were you then, do you think?
I think I was in high school.
In high school?
Probably maybe 15.
15. Wow. Well, there are probably not many 15-year-olds of that time that had been in an airplane.
No.
And on the Chesapeake, you've spent a lot of time sailing, right?
Oh, I did.
Yeah.
My father, he actually finished a boat. There was a group of men in Round Bay. And I think most of them worked at the experiment station at the Naval Academy. They were engineers kind of people. And one of them had designed this Severn 1 design boat. And they decided that 6 of them would get together and each of them would make a boat, and then they'd have races because they'd all be using the same plans. And
they would make their own boats. Wow.
So one of the guys died. Actually, he committed suicide. First I ever heard of that. And so Daddy took over his boat.
Right.
In other words, it was partly made. But my father was a very good carpenter. He was good with the tools and building. So he finished that boat and gave it to me. And inveigled a couple of the neighborhood boys to teach me how to sail. So they did. And I had 10 good years of sailing.
So when did you start sailing, do you think?
I think I was about 11.
11? Wow. So 10 till, or 11 till 21, 22? That's when you...
Exactly.
Okay.
And Priscilla, well, it was her brothers mainly who taught me to sail. Tony and Harriet, Tony and David, they taught me to sail.
Wow.
And we raced, and we did pretty okay. Then as I got older, I sailed for a guy named Tom McNamara.
Heard of him?
Not Tom McNamara.
Oh.
Tom McNamara.
Ah, okay. Haven't heard of him.
He was older. He was like I was 20. He was 35 or something. But I crewed for him. He had a Comet. Comets were much more common than a Severn 1 design. So they had races all over the bay with Comets. And we would go sail in regattas many weekends. His wife's name was Pete. But she was definitely a she. But she didn't like to sail.
Right.
And so I used to crew for him. And then they had the Chesapeake Bay Championship, the Women's Championship, when I was about 20 probably. And Priscilla crewed for me. And it was in Comets, so I was used to sailing a Comet.
That's a particular type of sailboat, I take it?
Yeah, it's a design.
Oh, it's
a Comet 1 design. You know, if it's a 1 design, all the boats supposedly are the same, which is impossible, but
right.
Yeah. And so they got together a bunch of Comets and a bunch of women crew, and we won. And went to sail in the Adams Cup, which was a big deal, up on Long Island Sound. It was supposedly the big championship, but it was really just boats on the northeast coast.
Yeah.
And when we got there, they had never heard of Chesapeake Bay as a sailing place. It was the first time.
So
Did they ever had anybody at the? Oh, they sail on the Chesapeake Bay.
So what happened? How'd you do in the up in the Sound?
Well, there were 7 boats, and we came in 4th.
Okay.
It wasn't great, but we had a wonderful time.
Okay.
And we had to sail in boats. Like the Comet is about 16 feet long, and has a mainsail and a jib and a dagger board and a metal centerboard that goes up, that you can move up and down, and no spinnaker or anything. And the Adams Cup was going to be sailed in 210s, and they were 30 feet long. They had a keel, permanent keel, heavy weight keel that would keep the boat moving, and a spinnaker, and then a mainsail and a jib. So the main difference was you had the spinnaker and you had the keel, the heavy keel, so that it would keep the boat moving. And when you approached the dock, if you had a keel boat, you had to allow for that in your approach to the dock.
Because the keel would extend under the water, right?
It was heavy, and it had made momentum. See, whereas the little centerboards didn't make
They didn't really have that.
Yeah. They weren't that heavy.
Right.
So it was a little tricky, but there was a 210 on the Chesapeake Bay, and we got to know the guy who owned it, and we learned to sail it in about a month.
Wow.
But anyway, that was a pretty exciting time. And Priscilla was my crew, and we had a crew of 4. We took the skippers off of 2 other boats. And we had a crew of 4, and we went up there to Long Island Sound. And up there they have tides that were so strong. And if there was no wind and the tide was strong, sometimes you're better off in a race to throw your anchor over and sit still for a while.
Really? Because otherwise you're going to get sucked out to sea?
Yeah, well, you're going to go in the wrong direction.
Right.
So,
how'd you get the boat there? Did you sail it?
no, they had the boats. We had that was also a one design.
Oh, okay.
So they had like 7 boats up there.
Okay.
And 7 crews.
Gotcha. So they just had the boats up there waiting for you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And we've sailed 7 races, and each race you sailed a different boat to kind of compensate for.
Right. Yeah. Any sort of like discrepancies with each individual boat. Well, sounds like an adventure.
It was. It was. And, we were members of the Indian Landing Boat Club, which was kind of a concrete slab with a roof and screens coming down, and no running water or any facilities or anything.
On the boat?
No, this was our yacht club that we were sailing from.
Oh, okay.
We represented the Indian Landing Boat Club.
I see.
And when we got up there, we went to the American Yacht Club, and it was about, as I recall it, I'm sure it wasn't, but it looked like it was about 6 stories high and just huge,
giant,
big building.
Almost more of a social club than an actual yachting club.
Well, they said people stayed there,
Oh, well.
I don't know.
Interesting.
Anyway, it was interesting.
Yeah. Did you take many photos when you were on that trip?
No. There might be a couple.
So I know Priscilla has passed, but do you keep in contact with any of the other 2 crew members? No.
I know they're all gone. They're all gone. I've heard their obituaries. Connie, I knew. Connie's gone. Bobby's gone.
You're the last woman standing.
I'm the last one standing in a lot of groups.
Is that good or bad? I think it's good. You're still here.
I'm still here.
I mean, I'm happy you're still here.
I'm happy I'm still here. Yeah. Oh my gosh, yes. Well, now I'm gonna turn. I leave a note on here. I don't know why I should try to.
To let you know that it's empty?
No, it's not empty.
Oh.
It's a learning process.
It is a learning process. It's a lot of oxygen.
Yeah. Well, at first I didn't know. I got these little tiny canisters. And I ran out so fast I was sitting around. And then I found out I could only order once a week. So
That's annoying.
I spent several days in my apartment because I couldn't get out.
All right, well let's have a little chat then. Where do you want to sit for your?
Okay. What do you want to know?
Well, I want to know all about it. I want to hear about your trip on Thanksgiving, but then I want to know a little bit more about your life and yeah, all the important stuff. I'm just gonna set this over here
Fine.
and just aim the camera at you because you are the star.
And you can put on like there and on the wall.
Oh, the Adams Cup reunion weekend. This is what you were just talking about on this glass here? The Adams Cup. You just mentioned that.
That was, Steve invited me to that. Strangely enough, the Women's Sailing Hall of Fame is in Annapolis. And a couple of years ago, they had a gathering, and Steve said I had to come.
Well, I'm glad you went.
Oh, help yourself to all of that.
How's this work?
So there was a reunion of people who had sailed in the Adams Cup, and he insisted that I come, and we had a dinner, and he had me tell my story. And my story is, in one of the races, there was very, very little wind. And we were in what had been determined to be the clunker, the worst boat in the race.
Oh, geez.
But anyway, we were in it. There was no wind that day. There was just no wind. And the sails were kind of flapping. And you know, you didn't know whether to put your anchor over it or not because there was tide, there was no wind, and it's hard to tell what. But Priscilla suggested, Steve's mother, suggested that we take off our shirts. Since there were just all women out there and nobody else was out sailing on that horrible day. It was the race, and so we took off our shirts and we were in our bras, which was pretty daring in 1952, 51. 51 it was. Anyway, and then we were on this leg of the race, next to the last leg, and it was a spinnaker race, but the spinnaker was, it held a little air, but it was hanging down on the deck, and we couldn't see. So we sent Bobby up on the deck because she was the smallest one and would cause the least disturbance. And we were neck and neck with another boat on this leg of the race. And we had to get around a buoy to finish the race, the next leg of the race. And we had to know where the buoy was. I couldn't see it because of the spinnaker. And she was up there. And we were back there. It was hotter than blazes. And all of a sudden she said, they've shortened the race. They've shortened the race. we're about to cross the finish line, and here we are in our in our bras.
Oh my God. And so you crossed the finish line wearing your bra.
We did. So anyway, he had me tell this story.
That's pretty funny.
And I guess I had worked on it, and it went over very well. Everybody laughed.
Oh, of course.
Thought it was quite funny. And so it was a good evening. And we turned out to be, I was not the oldest sailor there. There was another woman from California who was older than I was, and she still was sailing on the San Francisco Bay. I was impressed, because I'm
That's a
not
pretty big bay.
But anyway, she was older than I was. But we were the earliest winner or participants to participate. In other words, we had participated earlier than anybody else who came, because we were very young when we did that.
Right.
So our turn came
Well,
in 51.
So what would you like to talk about? I kind of had a couple things.
Well, one thing I would like to say is that I have been very blessed by wonderful family. And I didn't always appreciate, but the older I get and the more I see, I know that we have a wonderful family.
We do.
All together. And every time I meet a new member, a baby or or a child or an older person, I always love them.
Oh.
They're always good people, and I just am very grateful for that. It's meant a lot to me in my whole life. Yeah.
No, we're good people. Yeah. We're good people. You know, one thing.
We are.
You know, everyone seems to care about each other and wants good things to happen.
And not only that, they're fun. They're fun.
For the
they're
most part,
smart.
yeah.
They care. It's just one after another. We're very blessed.
Yeah.
Let's see. Of course, I married Tom.
Well, maybe we could hold on. Let me do one. So one of the things I wanted to ask you, and we can kind of go any way you want here. I wanted to first ask you a little bit about yourself and your early childhood and kind of what it was like growing up.
Oh, well, I was very lucky.
How so?
How so? Well, I was the youngest by so far that I was like an only child, and everybody seemed to be delighted to have me.
Oh, and also I wanted to hear in your own words your name and your date of birth and all that.
I'm Pearl Elizabeth Podlick McNamara, and everybody calls me Betsy. And I was born on April 5th, 1931. Yes. And my childhood was really pretty good. I was born in Baltimore and lived on Harford Road for 10 years. On a streetcar line, actually in Baltimore City. Went to Montebello School, which at that time was a very fine school and was used for demonstration purposes to teach young teachers how to teach well. And in the meantime, it has deteriorated to a sad extent. But it was a good school at that time. My parents had a boat called the Old Salt, and my father and a friend of his made that old boat out of it made it like a cruiser of sorts, a wide beam cruiser. It was actually a sailboat to start, but it was a nice boat about 40 feet long and had a pilot house and bunks and a galley and whatever needed that you could stay on it. But that boat burned down when I was 5 years old.
Oh, geez.
And my father went to. He loved the water. He loved the water, and we began to go down to spend summers on the river, on the rivers of the bay.
Which rivers?
The Magathie River first, and then the Severn River for several years. And during that time, the Ritchie Highway was built, and Daddy realized that was a dual-lane highway with trees in the middle. It was quite beautiful, and he could live on the water and commute to his job. Of course, that beautiful highway has deteriorated over the years, and he spent many years trying to keep businesses off of the highway, but that was a futile effort, and he had to give that up. But anyway, for many years, for a lot of years, he was able to drive back and forth very nicely on Route 2, and then another route opened up that he could use when that became bad. Growing up in Severna Park, in Round Bay, from the age of 10, was just ideal. We lived on the Severn, or overlooking the Severn River, or near the Severn River. We rented for 4 or 5 years because World War II started just when my father was ready to build. So we were delayed. We couldn't build during the war because all materials and efforts went to the war. But he bought a very high piece of property, a hill. He bought the whole hill. And he designed the house that we lived in. I know he gave it to an architect, but he designed the layout of it. And we could see from that hill a very beautiful view of the Severn River. And if you looked hard enough, you could see from the other side of the hill, you could see the Magathie River. We were high enough to see over the highway and the next river up. The hill historically had been named Mount Misery because the Union soldiers were said to have had an outpost there, and my mother was sure that she saw the construction in an old tree of a platform, and she was sure that that's where the Union soldiers could see the Chesapeake Bay during the Civil War.
A little lookout post?
Yeah. And that it was so cold and miserable up there on that hill, they called it Mount Misery.
What a name.
Yeah. I think she tried to call it Laurel Hill or Holly Hill or something, but I don't know what ever happened. It was a very nice place, and a very great place to grow up in Round Bay, because there weren't that many people, and we had very few restrictions. I had to be home for dinner at 6:30, and that was my main thing.
Your main goal? Getting home by 6:30 for dinner?
Yeah.
Were there a lot of other children in the neighborhood that you played with?
Yes, but there weren't that many, so that we all played together, the boys and the girls and the young and the old, and we kind of adapted to each other and knew each other, and we played kick the can and touch football and kickball, and there were tennis courts down at the inn. We played tennis, and there was the main pier and there was the south end pier, so we could go to the beach, and it was pretty much idyllic, I think. Yeah.
So probably some of your earliest memories was in the 30s. It was the Great Depression. Was there ever a period of like want or?
Not for me. For my brother Bill and Bob, probably, yes. Yeah. No, I was in the 30s, but I never felt any want. My father was, I'm not just sure when he got his law degree, but he was not only a lawyer, he staked Uncle Harry, or at least contributed to Uncle Harry, his brother, owning a business, a moving and storage business. One of my early memories up in that house in Baltimore was my father designing the side of a truck that says, "The best way is the broad way." And it was in yellow and red, and they named it the Broadway Moving and Storage Company. And so that business kept going. And my early memories are that if Dad wasn't home at night, he was out on an estimate. He would estimate how much it would cost to store people's stuff, because maybe they couldn't afford to keep their house. So it was during the Depression, but it didn't get to me,
right,
personally. And my father and mother, I think, got through it pretty well, partly because of that moving and storage company.
Right.
And at the end, to tell you the truth, some of the stuff that people never got from the storage company ended up in our house. You know, that they never could pay for that.
They never could.
And I'm pretty sure that buffet right there behind me
It's one of those pieces.
is one of those pieces.
Oh.
Yeah, and the dining room set that came with it.
Oh.
And that they used all there for years. Yeah. So that was a good question.
Well, good. I'm sure it's, because you always hear stories about that time, but I know that,
Oh, another thing is that when Uncle Harry retired, Daddy got a sum of money as payback for his supporting the business in the first place. And so that was a good sum of money that he could use for retirement.
That works. Was it like a pension or something, or?
No, it was like paying the loan back.
Okay. So he got a share of, what he paid in.
His share, because he had made that company possible, or at least the extent of that company possible.
I got you.
Possible by investing in it.
For sure.
And never got anything back until Uncle Harry retired and split some of it. I don't know if he split the whole thing with him or what the deal was, but there was some money involved in the end.
Oh, good. So what can you tell me about your parents? Like, what were their names? How they met? Any sort of details there?
Oh, yeah. Let's see. My mother was the oldest of 9 children, 7 girls and 2 boys.
And what was her name? What was her name?
Pearl Elizabeth Cook. Pearl Elizabeth Cook Podlick. Yeah. and I was named after her. They lived on grandfather's farm for a lot of years. She grew up there and had a lot of free range, but she also had a lot of responsibility as the oldest of 9 children. And she learned to sew and made nightgowns for everybody or dresses for 7 girls or whatever. She had a lot of work to do, and she preferred sewing and she preferred reading. She liked to read to the younger children.
And do you know her birthday?
January 20th, I would say 95, but I'm not sure.
1895.
1895.
1895.
Yeah. Let's see. So, yeah, she had a busy life, but a lot of freedom. And grandfather was out there, always on the farm and always there when they were in trouble. You know,
of course.
He kept an eye on the kids.
And what was your grandfather's name?
Her grandfather, I don't know.
Or what was your grandfather's name?
Norman. There he is. Norman Cook.
Norman Cook. So this is your grandfather, Norman Cook?
Yeah.
Wow. Love that mustache.
He was bigger and fatter and bolder when I knew him. But
wow.
There he is as a young man.
Wow. That's awesome.
So anyway, Mother worked hard and played hard and I think she had a good childhood. They did not have electricity. They did not have running water. They had an outhouse. And they had an ice house. They would collect the ice at the end of the winter, or maybe in the middle of the winter, and put it in a house with blocks of ice and straw and ice and straw, and so that they could have ice in the summertime. They had, I guess, I don't know how, she said it worked. So anyway, when she graduated from high school, she was out of there. She went to the city.
The city being Baltimore?
Baltimore, and she went to live with her uncle, her father's brother, Uncle David, who was a preacher. And I don't know how long she stayed there, but I think she later moved into a residence for women. And she went to some kind of what they called business school. It was a secretarial school. And she got a job there. Job through that. But at the secretarial school, she met Helen Podlick, who was my father's sister. And Helen insisted that she meet her brother Bill. And they were 18. She was 18 when they got married. He was 21, I think. And they eloped because there was never going to be a big wedding for them. And my father's family, all of his grandparents, I think that's right, were from Germany. They came over in about the time of the Civil War and came to Baltimore. There was quite a bunch of Germans in downtown, a German neighborhood for a while. And Granny had 5 children, and He was the oldest, so that was two oldest who married. And he did not finish college. He did not finish high school. Let's put it that way. He did not finish high school. And the story is that he, as the oldest, needed to get a job because his father did not do a very good job of taking care of his family. And so he was working at Hutzler's, a department store downtown. And I don't know what he did, but he got fired. And he was walking home, and he had to tell his mother. And then there was a newspaper young guy selling, hear all about it, the latest newspaper, the latest news. Law clerk drowned in the harbor. And Daddy thought, well, there's an opening.
Should get that job.
So he went and applied for the job. I hope this is true because it's a good story and I've been telling it a long time. I think it is because...
It's gotta be. If you tell it long enough, it's gotta be true.
Anyway, he got the job, so he went home and he told his mother it was the good news or the bad news. He lost his job, but he got another job. And from there, I guess he decided he liked being a law clerk. He liked the law. And at that time, he was able to go to law school without going to college, without even finishing high school.
And your dad was William Frederick Podlick the first, right?
Yes, William Frederick Podlick. Yes, and your grandfather was William Frederick Podlick Jr. And your
uncle, he's the third, I believe.
And then there's another one who's not William Frederick, though.
Yeah, I think there's a William, but I don't think it's the exact same name. Do you remember your father's birth date?
No, I don't even remember his birth.
That's okay.
I'm sure it's down somewhere.
Yeah.
Well, we have a book.
You have a book of like lineage?
Uncle Harry's daughter wrote a book about the Podlick side of the family, and it'll be in there. I'm not going to get up and look for that right
that's
now.
Okay.
Each of my kids have a copy of it, or at least they did. You know, kids, you never know when people are going to care about things like that.
Right.
But I have a copy here I could find. All right. So anyway, they eloped. They went up to Elkton, Maryland, where they could get married in 10 minutes or whatever. They took the train, and they came back, and they moved into, I don't know if they moved directly into Harford Road, but they moved there very soon. And they lived there for, I don't know, maybe 20 years. Because Bill, they lived there probably around 20 years. But when they moved in there, they were renting the upstairs. And a Mrs., I think you never forget, the woman who owned the property was an older woman. And she was getting older and kind of sick and had no family. And she made a bargain with my mother that if she would take care of the house and take care of Mrs. whatever her name was, that she would will the house to them. So that's how they got their first house. She took care of the woman, and Mother said it was a lot of hard work.
Of course.
Yeah. But anyway, they did it, and then the whole house was theirs. Yeah, and it was a 2-story row house on Harford Road, not far from Montebello School, not far from Clifton Park and Mother's Garden. There was a garden up there called Mother's Garden.
Huh.
And Mother said when I was little, she would wheel me over to Clifton Park and park me under a tree in the carriage and play 9 holes of golf.
While you were just under the tree in the carriage?
Yeah. She said she could see the carriage from all around. I don't know. Anyway, I've survived, right? I'm here.
So your mom was a golfer?
Well, she was for a while. She played tennis, and she swam a bit. Yeah. Yeah.
What are some of the
Oh, Granny.
Oh, yeah.
Granny, my father's mother. These are all I've got. Granny was very important.
Oh, my God. Wow.
She lived to be 92. She had 5 children. The oldest was my father, of course. And as I said, her husband was not a good provider.
So what was Granny's name?
Augusta
Augusta.
Snyder.
Augusta Snyder. Augusta Snyder.
Okay.
Anything more you want to share? Or?
Well, let me tell you about Granny. Granny had 5 children, 3 girls and 2 boys, Dad and Uncle Harry, Ann, Marge, and Helen. Helen introduced Mother to Dad. But she held the family together by running what she called a boarding house. And people came for meals. So every day she would cook dinner for this bunch of people and charge them. They didn't live there, but they ate there every day. And she would get up, she told me she would get up at 2 o'clock to go to the market to get all good food for what she was going to cook that day.
Was it mainly men? Was it mainly men who came to the boarding house?
There were couples.
Or couples?
There were often mentioned the Ziegfelds, and I never knew who the Ziegfelds were, but apparently they were of some note. But they ate there, and she worked really hard all her life, and when she retired, of course, she had absolutely nothing to show for it, and she was traded around from one child to another.
Right.
Mother had her for sometimes months at a time. Everybody did, except Helen, who lived in New York. That was a little hard. Yeah. Yeah. But she worked very hard to take care of the family. And they took care of her till she died at 92. She lived to be 92. And she was still on her feet.
And did she die in Maryland, or?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. She was at Marge's house.
Marge's.
At Marge. If you want a picture, these are my mother and father.
Sure. Absolutely. Your mother and your father. Put this. So your mother's name again was?
Pearl Elizabeth Cook Podlick.
And your father?
William Frederick Podlick.
Awesome. Let's take another picture of these.
And this is Mom Cook, mother's mother.
Mom Cook. So, were you close? Were you a close-knit family?
You mean with my cousins?
Yeah.
A little bit. Not as close as we might have been. But we did, yes, with Helen. No, not with Helen. Oh, well. Let's see. Close. His youngest sister, I think, was Anne. And we used to share holidays with Anne and Harry and Anna Mae and Jane and, oh golly, their little brother, oh gosh. And he's the one I've kept track of a little bit. He was in the Army eventually. He was an Army officer when, let's see, and Helen, we were somewhat close, and somewhat close to my mother's nieces, mostly nieces and nephews. Yeah, we were fairly close. So there were a lot of them.
Oh.
And Mother kept inviting them after we moved to Severna Park, that, you know, as they got older. Yep. We kept up pretty well with all of them. But I wasn't real close with my cousins. I was more close with my friends than my cousins. Let's see.
So do any more memories stand out when you were growing up? Like, you talked a little bit about the house that you were raised in, and, you know, you have a lot of recollection of your schooling?
Well, my schooling, I was not a great reader, and I'm still not a great reader. It was hard for me to learn to read. But I guess I was good enough to be in a class that came back for demonstration purposes, you know, to show how the teacher teaches. So at least I was probably well behaved. They could count on me not to cause trouble during the demonstration.
Of course.
And I felt when I moved schools from Baltimore City to Anne Arundel County that I was in the 4th grade, and I really didn't learn anything I didn't know in the 4th grade. And things kind of went downhill from there as far as I'm concerned for my schooling, because there were only 11 grades. You went 1 through 7, and then you went 4 years of high school. And my education was, I think, relatively good in math, very bad in English and anything else, really. But I did manage to get accepted in a very good college.
Which was? Which was?
Mount Holyoke. And I've been forever grateful. My father really wanted me to go to college because a lot of fathers were not promoting college for their daughters at that time. But I felt that when I got to college, we did take SAT tests at that time, And I had done well as far as grades go in school. But looking back on it, I did not get a good education in Anne Arundel County. And I was not really nearly as prepared as other kids who went to Mount Holyoke. A lot of them had gone to private schools or gone to school in New York, where they had very strict region exams, and Massachusetts, which had better schools. But a lot of them were private school kids. But anyway, I think I have benefited from that education over the years, the Mount Holyoke education.
Of course.
That I think it opened up ideas that have been very beneficial to me and to continue to learn and whatnot.
Absolutely. Well, that's how you learned how to become a chemist, and how did you meet Tom?
He came to Baltimore, and he was good friends with a guy named Charlie Collada. And Charlie's sister, Sis, went to Mount Holyoke and was in, I lived in a group that lived with a group that included her. And in fact, she was one of the two that we went across the country together. One of the two other women. So Sis told him to look me up, and I would introduce him to some girls. And forevermore, he claimed, even after we were married 50 years, that he was still waiting for me to introduce him to
some other girls?
Some cute girls. Wow. Very bad.
Wow, that's funny.
And he
Tom.
loved to play hockey.
Yeah.
And that was a very big part of his life, even after he got out of school.
Of course. Yeah.
And I appreciated that he gave a lot of himself to coaching kids, and even after his kids were finished, he coached other people's kids in hockey and gave it a lot of time and effort. And we played golf, and we traveled a good bit.
You guys spent a lot of time together.
Yes and no. Yes and no. Yeah, no. Of course, if he's coaching and driving back and forth up and down Route 95 with a car full of kids every weekend.
So you didn't see him when he was doing that?
I didn't see him when he was doing that.
Right.
No, but it wasn't essential that we always did everything together.
Right.
You know,
right.
we did things separately, and that worked for us. Yeah, I thought, and we did enjoy traveling, and we did enjoy our trips west to Arizona and to California and to Washington State, and our trips east to Europe, etc., etc. Yeah.
Many good places to visit. When were you two married?
July 17th, 1954.
1954. Yeah. Long time ago.
65 years we were married.
Wow. Long time. Long time for anything. Wow. Yeah, go ahead. I was going to say one of my very favorite trips was when I took with your mother. I'd love to hear about it.
It was a walking tour of Tuscany.
Oh, yes. That was not that long. That was like 10 years ago, maybe? That wasn't that long ago. Like, maybe a little bit longer, but yeah.
I think it was 20.
Oh.
Time flies.
Time does fly. Okay.
Yeah. That was a wonderful trip. Uh-huh.
Any specific memories stick out in your head? Just spending all the time with the family? Just walking around Tuscany?
Well, yes, but that we saw so many just amazing things. And we had such a good time. You know, it was just a time when we laughed a lot and had wonderful food and wonderful drinks and wonderful art to see and wonderful vistas and small ancient towns that look on the surface just like they must have looked 500 years ago or something.
Nothing has changed there for 500 years. Yeah.
And then we went to Lucca. Jan and Sandy and Peg and I went to Lucca while Priscilla and her mother went to Rome, because Priscilla had never been to Rome and we had never been to Lucca. And it was we just had a really good time and a lot of good food and a lot of laughs.
Oh yeah.
And I have a scrapbook over here.
Oh my God.
That I'd love to show you, but not right this minute.
Okay. Yeah, I'd love to see it. I was going to ask, my next question is, you have two older brothers, right?
Pardon?
You had two older brothers,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
What can you share with me about your memories with them?
I didn't really grow up with them so much. And I didn't get to know your grandfather until I was pretty adult. He came maybe once every 5 years to see Mother and Dad and me, and I was always there, and I was always glad to see them. But he wasn't so much of a brother to me until we got older. And once again, it was a case when I got to know him. He was cool.
Yeah.
I liked him. And I often agreed with him. And I thought we had a very good relationship, yeah. And yeah, with your grandfather, yeah.
Now, see, William Podlick, he was the oldest, right?
Mm-hmm.
And how big of an age gap was it?
He was 15 years older than I was.
15 years older.
Yeah. I do remember, he had been up in New York. He got a master's degree in education, and he taught at the Brooklyn School for Ethical Culture. And he got to know a woman named Mrs. Rutledge, who ran that school, and he really liked her and respected her and kept in touch with her, I think, till the day she died.
Oh, wow.
Yes. So while he was in New York, he got his master's from Columbia in education, and he taught at that school. And my mother and I went up to see him a couple of times. And my mother I remember one time she made me like 5 dresses that I could wear when we went to New York to see Bill. And I'm sure they were lovely dresses, but I really didn't like them.
Did you wear them all?
I did. But I didn't like them, and I felt very guilty that I didn't like the dresses that she had worked so hard to make. She was quite a good seamstress because she had made so many of those nightgowns and dresses for her siblings while they were growing up. And when they got older, she used to make clothes for them, like coats with fur collars and suits, and really was quite a good seamstress. And she would make these things with all these ruffles across the bodice and everything, and I just
Oh.
Didn't feel like I liked
Didn't
Ruffles.
feel super comfortable.
Anyway,
or-
we would take the train up to New York and eat on the dining car, in the dining car.
Yeah.
And that was very, very special. And the, you know, white tablecloths and all the accessories and the black waiters and everything.
Yeah.
Just, well, she just thought that was wonderful, and of course I did too.
Oh.
And one time we stayed at a hotel that had an indoor swimming pool, and of course I thought that was incredible. I can't remember, and the subway. I couldn't believe how fast and dark it was in there, you know? You look out the window, it was all dark and you were moving so fast. And then one time we stayed at his apartment, and which was really pretty small, and slept on a sofa that opened out.
Oh.
So one time it was in the hotel, and one time it was there. And one time, at least maybe twice, we went to the World's Fair. And that was a pretty big deal, and that was, I don't remember a lot of it, but there was this one show, it might have been called Futurama or something, but I don't know. But it had highways, like the highways with cloverleaf turns that didn't exist yet, you know? And they had little cars and these highways and houses and roads and everything, and you sit in these chairs and go by windows that open up into this big, like Christmas garden or something, but it
Right.
wasn't Christmas.
Right.
It was the highways and houses and cars and clover leaves and stuff like that. It was very new. And one time we went to a demonstration of television, video.
That must have been exciting.
It was. And they asked for volunteers, and I don't know how I was a volunteer, because I was not the kind of person that would have raised my hand. But the next thing I knew, I was a volunteer up there, and they asked me if I liked comic strips, and I said, oh yes, I like the comics. What is your favorite comic strip? Dick Tracy. And everybody laughed because I was this cute little girl in this little ruffled dress, and they didn't think I would like Dick Tracy.
Dick Tracy, that was a detective comic.
And
right?
I was totally mortified that they laughed when I said it. It was a terrible experience.
Man.
And then they played it back.
Oh, so they recorded you. And
Yes.
then- so that was the demonstration. Was like, hey, that was your moment of trauma that they replayed. I wonder if that's in like some archive right now. You know, from like the 30s or the 40s, and you know, you might be in some like reel in some basement somewhere, a recording of that.
That was the world. Oh, and the World's Fair. I had to leave the General Electric building. The whole bunch of us had to leave because they had lightning, inside lightning,
Inside light.
and it was very loud. The thunder and the lightning just scared me to death, and we had to leave.
Oh my God.
And
Inside.
the other thing that I remember that I really, really liked, and I'm ashamed to say, I liked what they called the midgets. These were dwarfs, really small people,
Right.
who were adults and all dressed as adults, and I was so fascinated that these people who were no bigger than I was were treated as adults.
Interesting.
But there you go. That was pretty good. My brothers, that may be when I began to notice your grandfather.
Right, of course. Well, you
And
know, if
when
he
he finished in New York, it was World War II, and he was going to be drafted.
Right.
So he decided he didn't want to be drafted into the infantry, and he signed up in the Air Force.
Oh, he was in the Army Air Corps?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
But he was an instructor. He never flew, as far as I know.
Right, yeah.
But he was I don't know what he taught.
So he was an instructor for pilots, you think?
I don't know.
Oh.
He was an instructor.
But it was in the Army Air Corps, right? Because I don't think they had the Air Force.
Okay.
But they had an Air Force, but they didn't call it the Air Force, if you know what I mean.
Okay.
Back in the...
I'll give you that. And before he went, he said, Betsy, you and I are going to go out to dinner. And of course, we had never done that. And we went to Carvel Hall, which was an old place in Annapolis. And I guess that they served dinners. I know they held dances and things there later on, but at that time, he said, we're going to go to Carvel Hall for dinner. And we had, he loved to eat. We had turtle soup, and I don't know what all, but it was very special, and I felt very special that he took me to dinner. Yeah, I was probably 10, 12, 10, no, probably about 10.
Well, it's a lot of uncertainty, going to war.
Yeah.
You probably wanted to have a memory, you know, and you still remember it.
So he met your grandmother through that.
Yeah, I remember that story. Well, what about your other brother?
My other brother?
Yeah.
Well, he was around more, because he was only 10 years older than I. Bill
and his name was?
Robert Fulton Podlick.
Okay.
And he did not invent the steamboat. Yeah. I guess I became aware of him on Harford Road. I remember when Mother and Dad celebrated their 25th anniversary. And Bob was probably a teenager at the time. I'm sure he was. And he helped prepare the house. And they took up the rugs in the downstairs and put dance wax on the floors for dancing. And upstairs they made like living rooms out as much as they could out of all the rooms upstairs, and had games and things like that. And then they had punch and food and drinks and whatnot. And he was very active in helping with that. And he was there when we learned that the old salt, the boat that Dad and Mr. Doyson had made into a boat. The boat, yeah, the old salt. When that burned, and I remember he was the one who told me that the old salt had burned. I was about 5. And he slept in the upstairs living room, which I don't know, they must have had. We had a downstairs living room, and the front upstairs was a room that had a bay window, and my father had built a platform that fit in the shape of that bay window, and he made a Christmas garden in it every year. An incredible Christmas garden. And he had trains and houses and lights and roads, and he did it, the whole thing, like the train tracks had rock salt bed, and the train tracks were on the rock salt. And then the grass was green sawdust, and the roads were, I don't know what they were, but the whole thing, I think you could sweep up and put it in a garbage can in the end, but so much work to do it. And the tree was in the middle. There was a place for the tree in the middle, and it was the width of the room. It was a pretty good width of the house. It was the width of the house. That front bedroom, or front living room as it was at that time. And it took weeks to put this garden together. And Bob used to help him. And I was not allowed to go in there until Christmas Day.
Because you thought you might, like, you know, ruin it, or you just wanted to have a surprise?
It was a surprise.
It was a surprise.
But no, I would.
You never ruin it. Of course not.
Anyway, so I remember that, and then he went to college, and he went to Western Maryland. Bill went to Towson State because he could commute and it was cheaper, and that was due to the
Depression?
The Depression, yeah. Bob was able to go to Western Maryland and live there on campus.
Western Maryland. Is that near Frostburg? I don't know where Western Maryland
It's in that, I don't know.
Keep going west, you'll find it.
Anyway, so he went there, and he was in ROTC. So when he got out, he was commissioned a captain. No, a first lieutenant. He became a captain, and he retired a colonel, actually. And anyway, he went to college, and he married Lynn somebody or another, pretty girl, and then went off to war. And he spent the war mainly in China. So, you know, sort of unusual, I guess, but he was at a place called Kunming, and Lynn was not faithful to him and sent him a Dear John letter sometime before he got home. Yeah. So he came home. He weighed about 135 pounds, I think. He was very thin, and I saw my father cry. And then he lived at home. It was still a couple years before we could build the house because the war was over, but materials and whatnot were
Still hard to come by?
Yes. And he went to law school then. And he lived at home. And finally he rented an apartment down the road from us. A small apartment where he could study without being disturbed by all our rockets. Right. I don't know. It was better for him, he thought, to be able to not be at home all the time. So he moved down there. And then I got to know him, and he married Priscilla, who was my best friend, and I got to know him pretty well before I got to know your grandfather pretty well.
Well, that is pretty awesome.
Then, I don't know, then everybody started having children, and I liked everybody's children. Everybody.
Well, of course.
They were all good people, and they were very loving and wonderful. Yeah.
Well, that sounds awesome. Well, you know, we've been almost, believe it or not, about an hour. So, do you want anything more you want to share real quick?
Let me say that I was very, very glad that I decided to go back to work after the kids were grown. And it was hard for me to figure out, well, it wasn't hard to figure out what I wanted to do. because I had volunteered in the school library while I was not working. And I knew I could do that job, and I knew I liked that job.
Right.
And during that time, when I wasn't working, I coached Sandy's softball team for 5 years, and I volunteered at the school and was president of the PTA and stuff like that, and did a lot of volunteering. And then I decided I don't want to volunteer for the next 20 years. I would like to get a job.
Right.
And it took me a while to figure out what was my best road to getting that job. And it turned out that the University of Maryland at College Park was my best bet. And I could get a degree there that would prepare me to be a librarian, a school librarian, or a public librarian. You know, it would be versatile. But I knew I wanted school if I could get it. And very lucky, after I graduated, I applied at public schools around, and nobody wanted to hire me that right away. And so I made a list of the private schools and went down it in alphabetical order and called them up and said I had a resume I would like to drop off for them, and if they were interested, I hoped they would consider me, because I didn't know what else to do. And when I got to Friends, they said, "Oh, yes, you need to talk to Byron." Byron Forbush was the head of the Friends School. And it turned out that it was August, and they had just found out that the woman they had hired for the job her husband had been transferred out of state, and she was moving. So they had an opening, and it was coming down to the deadline.
Oh, that worked out pretty well.
And that was very lucky, because I got to know something about the Quakers, and I really, there's a lot I like about the Quakers. And I liked the job, and I really felt when I met the faculty at Friends School that I had met soul sisters. I had met people who were like me.
Aww.
At least it felt like it was right, you know?
You felt right at home.
Yeah. So, and the kids were good, and the job was challenging enough. It was challenging. It was fun.
Of course.
And it was a great move for me, and I worked there for 19 years.
Wow.
So, yes, very glad I did that.
Oh my God. Well, that's good. It was kind of like a new beginning, almost a rebirth for you.
Yeah. Well, it really, and then when I retired, I did video. I took 2 classes in two semesters in video production over at the community college.
Oh, wow.
And classes that included like 12 boys between the ages of 18 and 20, and me.
You taught that?
No.
Oh.
No.
You were a student. You were.
I took 2 semesters of video production, and I had invested quite a bit of money in video and quite a bit of time, and I didn't do anything very great at all. But it was interesting.
I mean, video is a fun thing to learn.
Yeah.
You know, even photography. You know, just still photography is still. I took a photography class in college, and that was life-changing for me, because it made me a better photographer. Just how I framed the pictures and
how you knew the light.
Yeah,
about light.
Exactly. Like, you know, backlighting. You know, it's better to have.
Yeah, I should have known about that light.
It's fine.
we learned that.
All good. It's like not a big deal.
Yeah.
But
and then editing, and some of the programs for editing were very complicated.
of course.
And the whole thing it just kept changing so fast.
I know.
It changed so fast.
And how long ago was that?
Well, it was right after I retired, so it was in, probably in the 90s. Early.
So if this was the 90s, you probably would have been doing the editing on like video cassettes, right?
Yes, we had, it kept changing, you
Right.
know? It was yes, it was, first it was, those big old clunky ones, VHS,
Right.
and then it was Super VHS.
Right.
And then it was mini tapes, something, you know, and it kept changing.
And now it's all on computers. If
And-
you were to do that now, it'd all be on computers.
And I used some kind of Apple Pro something or other. It was fairly complicated and fairly expensive. And Tom, I got a camera that cost $4,000.
Oh man,
Big deal.
that's a lot of money.
It was a lot
That
of
was
money.
still a lot of money.
Yeah, and I had, you know, a tripod and all this stuff. And I made some videos for, that's another thing I did. I was another almost 20 years, it was 19 years again. I was on the board at McKim Community Association
Oh yes.
in Baltimore.
Right.
And they were down in the projects, you know, and they had after school program and a very good wrestling program. And
I actually saw one of your videos once.
Yeah.
You actually shared it, and I remember there was a guy on there talking about wrestling.
yeah,
Yeah.
yes, they don't do wrestling anymore. The guy who coached it for 100 years has stopped, but they have a wonderful guy now who does track.
Okay.
And the kids go to the national, you know, the Summer Olympics.
Oh wow, that's awesome.
Yeah, so they get some really good experiences there, but Baltimore is such a mess.
Yeah, it's got some hard times the last couple decades.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, well, I think that about covers it.
Yeah, that was great, Betsy. Thank you so much. Cool. All right. Well, signing off for now. Until next time.